Alright, the PC crashed at 10 a.m. today. I went into the Windows log to try and figure out why it crashed. Uh, there was no audio playing whatsoever, and both displays were asleep, and the PC was also unresponsive to holding down the power button, so I had to flip the power switch on the power supply. The system log led me to believe something went wrong with the Skype application. I uninstalled the Skype app because I don't use it. There's absolutely no situation in which I want background updating to interfere with the PC just operating for the purpose that I operate it, which is to run my stream. So I also disabled the background intelligent transfer service. Hopefully it won't just crash in such that way. Um, but the pattern of crashing has continued ever since connecting this second monitor. So I am going to have to subtract the monitor and then continue everything that I'm doing and only use the second monitor selectively at a time if that proves to get the computer to run, because it should be able to run days and days just fine. It should not be hard crashing several times a week. So my alert level is raised now to the point that I'm going to stop using the other monitor and try a different monitor, switch this monitor with my other extra one I have, and continue troubleshooting it. We're gonna play some WoW. First we need to do a sound check. There's too many other sounds playing. I need to turn them down, first of all. Okay, I'm gonna do two things in WoW. I'm going to try and figure out my Covenant quest, finish the Bastion optional quest, and I am going to play this mage, this Void Elf mage that we made. Where did my sound check cancel itself? Come back here right now. You're not allowed. Oh, and I almost lost this idea on the way. Um, but I'm going to narrate my original uh, script 1-1. I have it here in my Evernote. And this is the script that's supposed to be first in the whole series of scripts that I started in the summer. Underneath, where is it? Ah, okay, essay compile. Harm reduction 1-1 script. Premise and introduction. I am extremely proud of my craft. Well-being is a mystical sensation that is only understood by overcoming illusions and coercion. I speak for the well-being of our social organism and every individual cell that it consists of which it consists. Disconnection and the use of force are illnesses. Harm reduction is the name of my platform because it specifically calls out the damage that we can agree upon as harmful, regardless of individual beliefs or principles. The name embodies my refusal to be a bystander to gross negligence and toxic abuse. My channel is about mental health, creativity, and inner peace. My mission is to spread harm reduction until it's the standard, ensuring sovereignty for anyone who seeks growth uninfringed by Nazi force and violence. That's the education of a monk. Liberation. Okay, successfully managed to restart the sound check. I think all the sound is still perfectly set up, but I just needed to confirm that it doesn't have problems because I had to fucking start the PC again. I've been listening to my stream from November 21st today, since I'm caught up on my streams up to that point in the archive, and it is a kind of comprehensive stream launching the Diablo 3 season. Um, highly narrated, very, very cool stream. I'm probably going to replay it and skip the quiet parts, or the parts that really are about gameplay only, just to create a new compilation narration of the parts of it that are about what I'm doing in the harm reduction process. I want to insert this after that introduction statement that I just read. My door is always open. It's blue, and it glows with an educational hum. This is the gate to enter peacecraftzeNmonastery. I would like to know, what is your question? Or in other words, I would like to know what is good. What what do you like? From your perspective, what's good? That's what the question, what is good, means. It's the same thing as what is your question. It's just a different way of saying it. Now, I'd like to change the layout of this Evernote page. Oh, there we go. Let's just maximize the note and change the size of this window. Hey, what? Okay. Okay, let's write a chat. Script continuing. Because I'm going to cut that part out from the final script highlight. And we're going to start the game. Informed by my childhood as a misunderstood neuroatypical, my harm reduction politics are three main pillars, based on what went wrong. I was put on Ritalin, age 6, as if my difference was a disability rather than a talent. Question I gained: so what is healing or mind growth then? I was forced through toxic authority institutions, the Mormon cult, and the US government school. Question I gained: how do you work? What is your actual free will? I wanted to follow my fascination and grow in my own way, but staying home where I was free was not allowed. I will talk more specifically about this in the next page, 1-2, the complexity problem. Question I gained: what is the solution to complexities? Loss/chaos/despair/suffering? Or how do you even find the boss, let alone battle it? This is the Slyman mythos explored in the 3rd chapter with video game koans. My battle shout is for gifted kids. I am speaking for every child being harmed and destroyed by Nazi institutions and false scarcity that are the standard of citizenship here for all but the most privileged, who withhold the natural flow of the social organism's emergent wealth. A social contract which recognizes that education and growth is owned by individuals and not attained from authority or gatekeepers is a social contract that permits the existence of outsiders and doesn't promote crowd/bureaucracy cancer. Viable technology is that which completely eliminates previously heavy overhead, cost/burden, and so is adopted widely. It makes the previous solutions obsolete. The innovation winner is that which does harm reduction most completely, most decentralized, and with the greatest amount of voluntary flow. World peace happens because our technology becomes harm reducing, simultaneously granting us safety and refuge, but also the ability to be seen and not need to hide away. In other words, the metaphysics of my PTSD, and moreover my complex PTSD, where I hid myself from the human experience and did not participate in human contact, gave me something. It gave me knowledge of um, the questions that I would need in order to, express myself, to express the answer to these problems that I witnessed as a child, grew through, and in spite of, and invented my identity. End of intro and premise statements. Okay, so that is the intro. Now let's move into the arguments section. Essays establishing the principles of harm reduction. I am going here. No, what the fuck are you doing? I'm very close to where this quest giver is supposed to be. Okay, let's make a chat to indicate where I'm at. Arguments section. And I need to turn down the other streams I'm listening to. They're too loud. Okay. Okay. I think that building might be where the quest giver is. Let's try this. Essays establishing the principles of harm reduction. Number 1, TLDR, or I wrote the book that will save the world. Number 2, ANCAP 101, purchasers and fulfillers. Number 3, hashtag math politics, harm reduction education platform overview. And number 4, the final word, the punchline on opposing fascism, or anti-education. Asterisk title, Educator's Fury. Page 1, Innovation, Viable Tech in a Social Organism. I wrote this book on saving the social organism, and it's just 3 pages long. Part 1, Social order is a circle. Our agreement of what is valued is that which flows back into the organism. If it does not, we cannot place value on it. Look, what goes out is our waste, poop. What flows in and circulates is our lifeblood. It's a red circle. A circle indicating lifeblood. Or the life liquid that is inside the bubble on your left in Diablo. The red HP liquid. Any attempted systematized defiance of the circle constitutes a tumor or a heart attack, some type of unholy disease which kills the organism. In today's tech feudalism, that's called net worth or influencers. And I have this symbol, which is the $ vomiting face. Let's see how well that translates to this. I see that face as vomiting, but with $ in its eyes. Technologically civilized would mean that the emergent wealth of the organism flows from the top end of total aggregate productivity, value generated, back to the beginning in an automatic credit type of way, such that no individual beneficiary is raised above others, and no individual sponsor or authority point is held responsible or given any control of this flow. This would be the invention of decentralized money. The viable tech connecting all other viable tech to all beneficiaries, effectively employing the meaning of innovation to reduce or totally eliminate labor/overhead/cost to human well-being and the enjoyment of wealth produced by the organism as a whole. Page 2. You cannot govern by ruling, you dingus. Automating the purchase of the basic minimum in food and well-being commerce on behalf of the entire population is the means by which tech feudalism converts into technologically civilized. Because the only authority that doesn't kill the organism is that of the combined emergence of the voluntary spending decisions of all sovereign individuals. For your health, dingus. Purchase on behalf of is the bridge tech to the full decentralization system. Because you need to retain the aspect of voluntary purchasing by individuals, who then select and continue to sustain the winners in the innovation contest, whose offering is widely adopted because it's the most optimal and wins at reducing cost and overhead. Purchases where only the individual has made the decision hold the entire commerce network accountable for serving individual and family well-being. When individuals or families are the ones making the decision and no one else, it holds the commerce network accountable for the well-being, for the actual purpose of commerce, to allow human well-being to happen and take place at the lowest cost. That's capitalism. Any other use of authority is straight tyranny. It is straight violence. It is not a capitalistic system to do violence to people and expect that that's going to grow your social organism. It is not going to. So when you examine this math and you understand it, we can see that this is pure ANCAP, a means of total divorce from the harmful entanglement of authority and status attainment institutions like government and corporation. A simple payment to every citizen to purchase their well-being voluntarily, sponsoring the winners in the contest via the auto-refilling minimum income credit app, like as if it was Bill Pulte sending everybody $1,337 every month on their Cash App. That's the end of page 2. And page 3. We held these truths to be self-evident. The income floor is like tokens to vote via purchase, but simultaneously a gesture of well-being toward all those who have been harmed by state tyranny, domestic violence, corporate rigging such as monopsony, gouging, monopoly, theft, etc., or any kind of oppression. Of course, as any good democracy which eliminates poverty and guarantees life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness should do. The actions of a truly free populace will then fund whatever else can or should exist in such a free society, because healthy humans who aren't exhausted, depleted, and diseased are creative and industrious. Here you have a next-generation society that literally invents itself. It starts with the decentralization of money so that democracy begins to flow in the commerce itself. Okay, that is section 1, the introduction. Section 2, technological civility, the inclusion model. Inclusion pricing / inclusion model. Allow me to mathematically discuss the next human innovation equation. First of all, social order definitions. We are calculating social order where we have done something important and unprecedented, which is to eliminate boss tyranny and install voluntary transacting as the basic motion of a social contract. The lack of doing so is how the economy runs now, full of tyranny and abuse, and distraction politics with illusory division. Doing so will philanthropize the value between the purchaser and the fulfiller. The worker and the beneficiary of work both need to capture most, if not 100%, of the value within that transaction. Purchasers are devote placers. Anything that harms or suppresses the social organism cannot qualify under the fulfiller. It has to be actual value. This is the democracy of nature. The organism's emergent intelligence describes what is positively valued, either vital or desired, or just an optional luxury. And also, what is value minus? That's got the poop symbol next to it. Either simply inefficient, like obsolete or archaic, like the horse-carried letter, so we don't do that anymore, or worthless, harmful, or toxic. Inclusion model is the basic exertion of educational value, the human gain of wellness and growth, taking place of itself voluntarily. Okay, I'm gonna pause it for a second here. values. Reshow the game. Inclusion model is the basic exertion of educational value, the human gain of wellness and growth, taking place of itself voluntarily. Now, educational value is what is expressed by the basic principle about Zen. I stumbled into this knowledge in a way that was extremely potent because what I'm studying in Zen and in video game artistry and the education thereof is literally this educational value that is basically exerted by a functioning free society, free economy. Calm well-being in the present now, uninfringed by illusion or coercion. Instead of not allowing non-paying users to come in, you use advertising and other mechanisms which sponsor them. This allows you to avoid excluding people. An exclusion model is what kills your economy. It destroys it. You absolutely need inclusion in order to be functioning commerce. That is what the viable tech of decentralized money can and will do, enabling the democracy of nature by the principle of Wu Wei, not forcing things, allowing things to flow as they will of themselves. Meta-conclusion. The wealthy innovators or influencers that currently hold potential energy are responsible for continuously accumulating opportunity cost. If they were to view the emergent intelligence of the social organism somehow, with leader vision, they would circulate the necessary amount to fund work at the bottom, by sponsoring purchasers to create the work for fulfillers, to create work where it actually starts during the purchase, not from a ruler or a decider who is at the other end, removed from the action of the work. Emergence is the technological democracy replacement for a representative system that was made obsolete when communication, faster than the horse-carried letter, instant electronic messaging came forth. And that is the end of section 2, which was about the inclusion model and the math of the purchaser and fulfiller. Technological civility is the inclusion model. How do we include everybody? That is the sane way to run a society. Okay, so we are going to continue with the page 3. So then, now, I've got an interlude situated here, which is about the Joker. It sets up my monastery values, which I need to talk about because peacecraftzeNmonastery is the arrival point for what I'm doing specifically as a creator, as an educator, and as an artistic person who's designing a game, among my other philosophy and gameplay style content.
Discipline in all things.
There is another Joker. The monastery idea flows into and within the harm reduction platform, and is a necessary piece of monk education as a structure of my mind, my deepest heart. Monastery is harm reduction, because if money were no object, I would open them everywhere and hire other monks to run it with me. The real purpose is to offer a place that is not tied down by commercial/profitability burden, nor public funding approval. The need for this to exist is strictly because humans need place to have peace, in order for any kind of educational core value to exist in said society. It needs to offer everyone a place they may voluntarily go in order to do whatever it is that they'll do, whatever it is that they find valuable, important, enjoyable, or worthwhile. There was a time that Kanye tried to start a shoes gifting program, but what he should have done was open monasteries, the maximum adequacy third place. He was recently beheld saying the truth that everyone who has a baby gets $1 million. It surprises me that when he did this, he was called mentally unwell, when he's literally the only person saying the truth in public. I want to create the space for leaving this social contract as the main function of my business. My business literally is people's well-being. The Joker sees through all pairs of eyes, but there is another Joker, the warrior. The warrior is the Joker. The Joker is the tank. The tank is the monk. The monk is at the top, battling. He battles every boss, taking aggro and defending the young and the vulnerable, leading the group so that the newer ones may learn and get XP. This has an absolutely necessary and completely inevitable acknowledgement of the Mandalorian, who literally proclaimed my exact monastery values to the forces of evil across all the chapters of that show. And he had to exert the Mandalorian code in order to break the actual trade rules that he had previously agreed to, because the code of education, the code of protecting the young, was more important. And that's when the phrase "this is the way" comes in. It is what it means. It's literally the manifestation of education. The monastery, then, is the warrior's house of gathering, the base. What school actually means, the warrior's house. Stanley, the love samurai, lives there. In regular reality, the love samurai is a joke in the Stanley Parable Raphael level. In my game, the love samurai is the Joker. He's me, education monk. Monastery is the warrior's house, the place where no Nazi infringement is allowed to take away our well-being or our free will. Okay, that's the end of the interlude. And now we have essay argument number 3. Looks like we're freeing these historians here for this quest. That finishes the zone. Essay argument 3. Harm reduction is critical, vital, and sharply precise with intent. It is abstract but unambiguous, comprised of a few separate but inseparable policy values. First, understanding the nucleus values: well-being/healing and curiosity/sovereignty.
Did I challenge you?
So, within those nucleus values come out 3 very, very distinct and specific policies that need to take place for a harm reduction path in our social organism. The first one, the very, very first thing that needs to happen and has actually started happening, is called decriminalization. This is to remove policing against medicinal and educational actions and tools. This item resonates the recent cultural movements to decriminalize federal cannabis, psychedelics, plus all types of sex work or human interaction for the purpose of well-being. Most recently, the public outcry to defund policing. Oregon even decided to decriminalize all drugs. This is just the very beginning of decriminalization as a policy action which is completely inevitable and the way of a free society moving forward. This item is an essential modification to the social contract. We need to be allowed to grow up and make decisions, with no one standing over the shoulder saying we're wrong. That cannot be tolerated anymore. It's just too much. It's too violent and too oppressive. And it can't be tolerated. We're done with it. That's it. Policy item number 2 is called decentralization. I've spent a great deal of time talking about this, both planned and scripted, and when I just end up talking about it because I get myself worked up thinking about any given issue. Decentralization means to fund well-being directly. This first started emerging in society, I would say, with the Occupy Wall Street movement, but I've got content from well before that, from the 60s, that very, very clearly establishes the meaning of decentralization as a policy, as a policy of a sane, free society. And ever since then, we've been wondering, so why can't we just stop wasting all this money that's being wasted on political campaigning and lobbying and military budgets and so forth, and just spend it on what human beings need to be well? Wouldn't that be an educational use of funding? Answer: yes, it would. We must fund well-being directly to humans, to children and their guardians, as valued, individually owned work. So in other words, the children's well-being is valued. The work of creating that well-being is valued, and the cost of supplies to do so is recognized as a necessary cost we have the broken institution of school, um, which has made only the very, very first admission of a necessity for education without actually engaging the meaning of education, which, as I mentioned earlier in the arguments essay before this, is literally growth. The growth that you have when you are free from both infringements, coercions, and illusion. So we fund children and their guardians. We value that individually owned work which is not owned underneath any brand or bureau or outside authority. The authority for this literally exists only within the family, the individuals. This is an income floor policy. Its true meaning is that there can be no outside boss who can fire you or in any other way withhold the funding that constitutes your freedom to have well-being, to have food, shelter, information, and the utilities thereof. That outside boss is not the stakeholder. You are, on behalf. Your kids are. We will have decentralized this by letting it be funded at the very bottom of the social order, at the purchase level, recognizing that the best purchase will always be made by the individual. With democracy, that is the liberty that we claim to believe in, so it's time that we started acting like it. Policy item 3, infrastructural. Third places, that kids may be kids and peace is the purpose. All are invited and it's not for sale. Very, very simple, common sense for the type of spaces we want to have in a civilized social order. I'm not saying don't have a public building that is a school. I'm saying don't have it be an authoritarian hell, which is a part-time jail with bosses and grading and de-individualization. Which is what they are right now, what they were when I was forced through it, and what they still are, which is hilarious when they started trying to force this into kids' homes with Zoom authoritarian school. It was very, very, very quickly revealed for what it actually is. Useless, a completely broken institution. To have it at all, you need to make it both voluntary and useful, so that children and families may use the resources in support of their kids' curiosity. TLDR, distilled conclusion. My task as a monk educator is to unplug us from the use of force matrix, which demands that we emulate coercion, and plug us back in again, but into the contact and sharing matrix this time. Disconnection is the illness. The use of force is the illness. Contact is the medicine. Sharing is the medicine. How to contact? Answer, celebration. How to share? Answer, crafting.
Destiny brought you here.
We have some symbols, the on symbol and the speech eye. For the final conclusion line. Well-being, the means of doing, is healing. Sovereignty, the means of doing, is curiosity/question pathing, quests. Final conclusion page in the arguments section. This is page number 4, argument number 4. Educator's Fury. It's done now. If you feel this vibe, welcome to Antifa. This is all that we want. Hello. Greetings. In the mainstream handling of autism spectrum kids, there is a system that amounts to dog training, ADA. Crowd tyranny/fascism is de-individualization. Authoritarian wants people stripped of all individuality, so that all they may do is that which is commanded and permitted. This is elaborate self-deconstruction. Coincidentally, the same thing as too much self-awareness. Group sovereignty reveals the individual to be seen and shared. We as society are forcing a child through programming and calling it a success when you force them to say and do things they don't want. This is bad as fuck. Non-false educating is only resource providing and curiosity feeding. Number 1, give resources. Number 2, remove any force that damages curiosity. What? No rules? Every rule you're going to be making is about item number 2 there, removing any force that damages curiosity. Boundary setting that reduces harm/infringement, which kids can tend toward accidentally, is important, because errors during curiosity is the mechanism for their learning. Coercion institutions, however, do the opposite, withholding the resources that make us well, using violence, lawmaking, and misuse of the information network of money to keep well-being, rest, nutrition, and the basic decision will of the individual completely suppressed. Fascism is the desire to push people down to zero individuality, leaving only what is permitted and commanded. So, enter educators' fury. Removing all force illusions, it's seen. In the work of being well as an individual, no boss or ruler can decide behavior. Only the individual can make spending decisions. You have to undo the institution of using force before you can install decentralized well-being funding. I.e., you have to remove coercion policing, and suddenly, no landlord sharks can violently enforce absurd rent gouging. They are required to be reasonable without police authority. The impact of a basic income will not be real sovereignty unless you remove the use of force first. I am actually completely baffled that we don't have a two-tiered system of basic shelter and office space in society already, a publicly owned, as it were, system for sheltering people. I'm appalled that we don't even have the very beginnings of such a system, but we're very close. We do have what I consider to be affordable office space available now through office sharing, like co-working space. That's how I'm able to have office space to do this. But I'm absolutely appalled that this isn't already a public system whereby people can either access the free tier if they can't pay with the inclusion model, or if they don't want to be around the people who can't pay, then they themselves can choose to pay $100 or $200 a month to have a private space like the one that I have. This is costing me $235 a month, literally. I signed a 18-month agreement, and I got the cheapest price that they were able to offer. So if you remove coercion policing, you get to a situation that no landlord, no property holder can exert that in a way that's a scam that uses violence to back it up. Tangent over, back to the main point here with educators' fury. No boss or ruler can decide behavior, only an individual can actually make spending decisions. I argue against de-individualization schooling at the end of the platform. It's the same fucking thing as programming dog training into Spectrum kids. We need to stop doing it to gifted kids, and we need to stop doing it to all kids, because they are all gifts. The language of childhood is motion, so let's stop forcing them to sit still and obey. This is spreading wildly as we watch false education trying to be carried on in Zoom calls. No. Stop. How do we do it? Hashtag defund police. Hashtag UBI. Fund individuals and families. And finally, third places. Convert all school facilities to sanctuaries, which are voluntary, useful, and not for sale. How much easier could this be? False education must be ended so that we may see who we really are when resources and the freedom to use them actually exists. And that is the end of Educator's Fury. Page 4, sum up to the arguments phase. And that's the end of script 1.1, harm reduction. Originally thought I was going to do that while playing Diablo, but it ended up being the final quest in Bastion here. Just going alright, but I'm obstinately choosing to do this from the healer spec instead of switching to my melee spec. The tanks and healers koan is essentially the fact that the tank stands in the front to reduce infringement, to get aggro from any boss that threatens the healer's action. Anybody who's assisting the tank is essentially trying to also gather up any little threats that get past him that he can't possibly control all of them all by himself. So DPS is going to do support by trying to mop up any loose aggro that gets on the healer or that gets through to the squishies, essentially, who are being threatened. That the tank is trying to manage all the aggro and prevent that from happening. So the healer's goal is essentially to add wholeness, to give buffs to the group and restore from any damage that couldn't be mitigated or avoided by the tank's original harm reduction aggro direction. These koans are, I feel, directly responsible for the way I think about education and well-being. It literally came from the experience of gameplay. It didn't come from anything happening in society other than my witnessing of the total backwards horseshit that is the amount of harm, unnecessary harm and infringement being perpetuated on everybody in a society where your right to shelter or food literally isn't guaranteed. We don't have health care. I've been listening to this guy, Clayton Morris, on the Morning Invest, and he is an independent broadcaster who has chosen to, underneath what I consider to be the same thing here, the harm reduction banner, to inform people on the news from the position of somebody who isn't being coerced, somebody who isn't being controlled by the corrupt bosses of this society. It's just quite literally so far beyond. It's so many levels past what we should have ever accepted to have a society that doesn't have voluntary housing and a means by which shelter is ensured for people and basic health care is offered to anyone. The meaning of public health is being revealed by the pandemic by showing us that having public health is literally, the meaning of which is that we don't all have to suffer the consequences of the sickness of those who are suffering and dying, even if we don't necessarily catch the sickness. What the hell is with this guy? He runs away. Aggroing everything? That's great. We already used the elemental. It's pretty easy to run away when this happens. And we're gonna go back here and turn in the quest.
Yes, mortal?
How to become forsworn. Clearly we're creating a disguise. Okay, this person's gonna give us the next quest.
Go in service.
So this is the gate to enter peacecraftzeNmonastery. I was recently writing about this from the perspective of the fact that this is something we all contain. I wanted to speak about unity, and in order to do that, you have to say how the right to peace, the ability to have peace, we all contain some of it. Everybody's welcome. There's nobody who isn't allowed. We all contain it. So peacecraftzeNmonastery is just a symbol of the gate to enter it, and of the fact that it's my door. My door, which is always open. You may send me your questions or your feedback anytime, and I'm going to respond to you until such point as it's not possible for me to respond because there's too much input and I don't have time to create that much output. I don't foresee such a thing. I foresee the ability to respond to anybody who reaches out and open whatever kind of dialogue that you want to have. My goal with Peacecraft Monastery is to have a situation where I'm inviting people into human contact for its own sake. The purpose here is to establish the the simplicity, the simple goodness of human contact under its own merit. To basically break down the lies of a system which would deny us that human contact, which would deny us shelter, which would deny us health care, and deny us the liberty to spend resources for our own well-being that we are born with. We held these truths to be self-evident, and I consider that as a literal fact about what precisely it means to have peace. To be a monk and to promote peace and to teach about it and to celebrate it, I need to invite you into human contact.